So, in a nutshell, LG Nova
Mm,
is a organization in LG Electronics
mm,
with a mission to create next big LG company. Okay, so LG is a big company, but inside of LG umbrella, there are actually 64 companies, and one of them is LG Electronics. And our mission is to create next 65th and 66
mhm.
next billion-dollar new businesses.
Welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest from the Silicon Valley, where unicorns roam and innovation never sleeps. We've got top investors, superstar founders, and well known tech executives lined up to share their secrets on building and investing in successful companies. Just a quick disclaimer, while we may sound like financial geniuses, but please don't mistake us for your friendly neighborhood financial advisors. So let's get started and dive into the wild world of tech entrepreneurship. Great news for all our Smart Venture podcast listeners. Since January 8th, I've been hosting a new daily live show, Venture with Grace, on LinkedIn Live at 9 a.m. PT every weekday. Follow me, Grace Gone, on LinkedIn to catch up on past episodes and stay updated with future ones. You will get insights from key industry players and have the chance to ask questions live. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel under the Live button. Join me on this journey and let's explore the world of innovation and investment together. This episode is brought to you by LG Nova. Get ready to ignite your passion for innovation at the fourth annual InnoFest, happening at the iconic Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco on September 25th and 26th. This 2-day event, brought to you by LG Nova, is your chance to dive into the future with industry leaders and cutting edge startups shaping health tech, AI, clean tech, life science, smart life, mobility, and more. And here's something extra special. I'll be hosting a panel at InnoFest, guiding a dynamic discussion on the future of AI and the workforce. Join me along with other thought leaders as we explore the trends and technology driving innovation and positive change. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity to be part of the conversation and help create a brighter, more innovative tomorrow. Register today and be part of the movement at InnoFest 2024. Hi, Sokwoo. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so to start the show, I would love to give a shout out to our amazing sponsor, which is from Soko's team. So this episode is brought to you by LG Nova. Get ready to ignite your passion for innovation at the fourth annual InnoFest, happening at the iconic Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco on September 25th and 26th. This 2-day event, brought to you by LG Nova, is your chance to dive into the future with industry leaders and cutting edge startups shaping health tech, AI, clean tech, life science, smart life, mobility, and more. And here's something extra special. First of all, So Cool will be there. And I will be hosting a panel at InnoFest, guiding a dynamic discussion on the future of AI and the workforce. Join me along with other thought leaders as we explore the trends and technologies driving innovation and positive change. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity to be part of the conversation and help create a brighter, more innovative tomorrow. Register today at innofest.alginova.com and be part of the movement at Alginova InnoFest 2024. Okay, so to start the show, I would love for the audience to learn more about you. So obviously, you went through like college in Korea, and then you did your master at MIT, and then you have worked at White House, and now you're leading Alginova innovation team. So why don't we start with, what were some core lessons that you've learned early on in your career that you kind of brought to your day to day right now as a leader at LG?
Yeah. So, my career has been a little bit interesting. It's not linear. It was not
Mm,
a linear career. It's been pretty jumpy in some
mhm,
sense, but that's what I like. So that's what happened. So you're right. I went to college in South Korea, and I graduated from there, and I came to Boston to MIT to study mechanical engineering. So there was really no grand vision or anything like that. I just wanted to see, hey, what's out there, right? I mean, what's out in
Mhm.
this school called MIT? It sounds like everybody's talking about it. Okay, so I went there and had a very interesting experience of meeting all kinds of great folks, but also working on top-notch technologies, not quite mechanical. This is interesting. At that time, MIT mechanical department was in transition from very conventional mechanical engineering stuffs to more of a advanced or broader engineering side. For example, optics, computer science, and the electrical engineering. Those things were all combined. So interestingly, my PhD project, which I took on, was about biomedical sensors. It didn't really have anything to do with the traditional mechanical engineering. So the whole point was this. At that time, there was obviously concerns of a lot of elderly people, like right now, and they sometimes just die at home. And then nobody really knows what's going on, and they are just sleeping, and they're just found after several days or even months. And this is a tragedy. And in many cases, these elderly people, they just don't go to hospitals very often. So, how do we help them to monitor their health and
Mhm.
still in a way that is not inconvenient for them? So, very interestingly, the concept we invented was like 25 years ago was called sensor ring. It's a
Mhm.
finger ring. You probably think that, oh, that ring's going, where people are have their fingers these days. Yes, that ring was essentially conceptualized 25 years ago, and that
Mhm.
was my first PhD thesis. Actually, it was a PhD thesis at the time. Their technology was not there. It was just too early. So I had a prototype which was size of my size of like a nut, or not nut, so it's a size of a walnut, like this big, and it was not easy to move around. So it was not practical. So technology was not
Mhm.
there. Battery was not small enough. All that. So okay, fine. And I graduated and then thought about, hey, what am I going to do after this? And then a lot of folks come to us say, hey, you got to really start a business with this thing. Okay, so let's think about it.
Mhm.
New startup, exciting, right? But then when I dig into more, I realized that when they say they need me to start a business, they didn't mean the sensor actually. This was very interesting. They actually were very interested in the connectivity, the
Mhm.
technology that connects these sensors with extremely low power and with the long range through what you call multi-hop network. That didn't exist at the time. So okay, so I started a company that connects sensors and actuators and control them, which in retrospect was what we call these days IoT, Internet of Things. And that was sort of like a first company that came out of any academic research. Was so we were sort of like looked at as pioneers, did the company, raised multiple series of venture funding, typical venture round, and then sold the company and stayed on the company for a few more years. And I was asking myself, what am I going to do now, right? So okay, I did a startup. What am I going to do? And somebody called me. Actually, it was interesting. Somebody literally called me that claiming that this person is a recruiter hired by the White House. And they said,
Mhm.
well, they are looking for someone who is an expert in IoT. And I was like, no, this is a spam, right? I mean, why would any White House reach out to me? Why would the White House be even interested in IoT? I mean, they don't even know what IoT is. And this guy called me twice. So I was like, "Hmm, let's talk, okay? Let's see if this is even real." That was real. So essentially, at that point, it was 2020, 2012, 2013 timeframe. They were really looking at creating a cohort of a new private sector experts
Mhm.
led by the White House, but their work is supposed to develop and work on something for the future, really the future of America. So
Mhm.
that's really concept. And when they were looking at all IoT sector and they interviewed obviously a few people, I was lucky to be hired. So okay, that's good.
Mhm.
So I went there. the big difference, a lot of people ask me this, what is the big difference between working in the startup and federal government, even if it's high up at the like top level? Very different. Startup, you gotta survive, and then you gotta have to narrowly focus. That's a business. You gotta make the business work.
Mhm.
You gotta sell your product. You should not pay attention to anything else. That's basically it.
Mhm.
Now, when you look at when you go to work for the government, especially when I'm working for the White House Innovation Fellow, that doesn't work. That kind of approach doesn't work. You got to look at everything because you are looking at the whole United States and try to figure out how to nurture and foster and kick off the big Internet of Things initiative. So you don't need to look deep, but you got to look at everything. All the companies, hundreds
Mhm.
of leading companies, hundreds of universities, hundreds of even the nonprofits, all this. So that gave me a very different perspective about how I look at the world. And I ran an IoT program that was initiated at the White House, and then also they evolved into what it calls smart city
Mhm.
program. Because if you apply IoT into municipal government, that becomes a city, smart city.
Mhm.
So okay, so I ran it for 7 years in the federal government, and again, another recruiter called me out of blue and said, "Oh yeah, I'm a recruiter from LG." Okay, so I had one
Mhm.
experience, so I didn't really discard it at the time.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk. And he said, "Yeah, we really want to start a new innovation organization for LG Electronics, and would you want to lead it in Silicon Valley?" So okay, well, that sounds interesting. So I moved to Silicon Valley 3.5 years ago, and here I am.
Amazing. I wonder, I really like that what you said about like, like the recruiter just got you out of the blue to like save the future of America. But I wonder for in terms of like having the plan for like smart city or like the future of the US, like in terms of like identifying the technology that can change in like a really drastic way, what would be your thought on like, how like which technology to focus on since like before we like go on the show we're like briefly talking about the metaverse and like and like that was like back then it was pretty big and then like now we have AI and like I wonder when it comes to like picking the technology to implement like what's your thought process on like what should we like start looking at now versus like what should we like what trend should we kind of like study on.
That is a great question, and probably we can talk about it for 2.5 nights if you want to do that. I am a big fan of that specific question because that actually defined sort of my career in some sense. So I started as a researcher. I was a sort of like a student, grad student. Everything was technology. I mean, that's all you do. You research and then I started the company and made it work in real world to some extent, obviously. But for about 10 years of my journey as more of a technologist, so even if I founded a company, I still was very much of a techie. I always had this question back on my mind. Why is IoT not taking off as fast as we want? And even if it takes off takes off, why is it like not conquering the whole world like which was a dream? What I found out was painfully was, and some of your audience may not like this kind of answer. Technology was not the problem. The problem was the fragmentation of the market and adoption. So there was an abundance of technology, probably more than you can use. But when it does not provide a tangible benefits to everyday life, it is basically to the level that, okay, it makes my job easier, saves my time, it sometimes saves lives. If it does, it cannot make that connection. All these technologies we talk about is essentially just enabler. That there's nobody really, not nobody, very few people pays a lot of attention to it.
Mhm.
Although, if you look at it, a lot of those technologies actually became the foundation of a lot of the new things that we are actually seeing in everyday lives these days. So this is more like really, if you want to adopt anything
Mhm.
fast and more with a speed, you really need to find a way to impact the real world lives instead of just being the technology side.
Mhm.
So that was the lesson I had. And then that's exactly what I did when I moved to Whiteout. That was a part of the reason, actually one of the biggest reason I accepted that position. When you are in a startup, you cannot do that. You only are focusing what you do, and that's you cannot focus anything else. That's it. But now I am, much is a bigger place, and then say I can kind of have it's not a control. I can influence much bigger companies and much bigger organizations to come together, find a solution, and not technology solution, but a business solution.
Mhm.
What could IoT really do for your lives? How is going to change your life? How going to create more jobs? How going to create save life people's life? How is going to create additional sort of like a revenue for you? I mean, that's I think the direction I made. So going back to your question, so all this technology, call all of them enablers. Internet was an enabler. IoT was an enabler, and big data. All these things are enablers, and AI. From my perspective, it goes through almost exactly the same trajectory. Some of them is faster, some of them is slower. They People get excited about
Mhm.
those things because it's a new thing. New, wow, we
Mhm.
can do tons of things with this. But when they actually get to actual reality of say, okay, exactly what can we do with this? There are a few good examples, there are a few good businesses, but is it at the level that change your life? Most of the cases, that answer is no. Now, the question is, does it die? It doesn't. That enabling technologies has cycle. They usually has to go up, the hype cycle go down, and the Gartner's hype cycle, and then it kind of gradually come up. I have a little bit different perspective. That hype cycle happens itself is overlaid. Multiple hype cycles overlaid. IoT was a huge thing in back in late 1990s, but then it sort of like died down, and in mid 20s, 2000, it also came back again as industrial internet and all these kinds. And then it became come back again in 10 years later. It's just a cycling. AI is a cycling. But if you look at it, every time there's a hype, there are additional adoption takes place. So you can see the envelope, it always increases. The
Mhm.
point I'm making is these are all enablers. It will come. It is here already. It's just that
Mhm.
people don't know about it because these things make your lives a lot easier. They just don't know about it, but it's here and it's going to make your lives easier and easier going forward.
Mm. I really agree with you on like I feel like you mentioned that you make a big pivot to like from focusing on the technology to focusing on like the impact of technology and especially on the business lens because of that's how people could like actually benefit from these like core technological changes. And I want to start with like, since like I feel like as you know, I'm a big fan of LG and like the my fridge is LG and like, when I was a child, I used like LG like toothpaste and all that. So like,
Does it work well?
I
Of
I
course,
like
of
it.
course,
So
it
I like
should
it.
work well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I still have teeth, so like it definitely worked back then. So I wonder, so like when it comes to like, establishing like a corporate innovation team, like what's your approach on like, leveraging LG as a company to kind of like implement some innovation strategy to it? And then like for the audience who are new to like LG Nova, why don't we start with like, what is LG Nova? And obviously, people are familiar with LGS umbrella. Like, how does it kind of like internally connected to each other?
So, in a nutshell, LG Nova
Mhm.
is a organization in LG Electronics
Mhm.
with a mission to create next big LG company. Okay, so LG is a big company, but inside of LG umbrella, there are actually 64 companies, and one of them is LG Electronics. And our mission is to create next 65th and 66
Mhm.
next $1 billion new business that is very new from LG
Mhm.
perspective. We don't want to create something similar to what they already got. Then there's no point. But
Mhm.
new companies that for the future. Now,
Mhm.
I'm going to explain to you before I get into what we do. I'm going to explain to you why LG had an idea of create such
Mhm.
groups. So LG Electronics, one of the largest company inside of LG umbrella.
Mhm.
LG Electronics about $70 billion a year, with obviously thousands and thousands of the products you can see every day. We
Mhm.
are number one in home appliances in the world,
Mhm.
and even in TV, we are very up in the high two or three top ranked. So LG is doing very well. Actually, we are growing really, really well.
Mhm.
However, if you look at our portfolio, they're really based on manufacturing. Most of them are products you sell through channels. There's nothing wrong about that. It's a hardware manufacturing business. But the question there is, will LG stop there? Will LG
Mhm.
stop just being a manufacturer? It may be, meaning that that's because they're doing really well. I mean,
Mhm.
why would you need to change? But LG leadership is looking at much more in the future, saying we should really explore beyond this hardware manufacturing
Mhm.
business. So that's the mission I've got. Go out and find and build, not just find, this is important,
Mhm.
build new businesses, which is completely irrelevant of what LG
Mhm.
does today. So
Mhm.
this sets us apart with a lot of the corporate innovation groups, or a lot of corporate open innovation groups. A lot of corporate innovation groups, I would say 95% of them
Mhm.
exist to supplement existing businesses. There are huge business units, billions of dollars they make already, and these innovation groups, they come up with the new ideas that can make these existing businesses better. Okay, and that's sort of like a natural way of thinking because yeah, so we already are doing well. All we need to
Mhm.
do is look at some outside and see if there's anything good. Let's bring it in. That's completely different than we are completely different than that. We our mission is to create something completely new. Frankly, if you what you do is similar to what LG is already doing today right now, then we are not doing our job.
Mm.
So, and also we actually literally create businesses. And when I creating businesses means a lot. We don't just create small projects. We literally launch new companies. That's part of that part mission. So
Mhm.
we launch literally a new legal entity
Mhm.
outside of LG Nova periodically.
Mhm. I love that. I really like what you said about like, think about what could be the newer disruptor areas instead of just like focusing on the core business replacement in like manufacturing or like the established like business areas. Also, quickly say hi to the audience. Hi, Sandy. So, I wonder when it comes to like, actually day to day to pick the startups obviously for InnoFast, we will like have like these different subsectors like health tech or AI or clean tech or life sciences or smart life mobility, all these different sectors. I wonder what is like the process of like building a company with LG Nova. So if I'm a startup, I'm building like a life science business, and then I come to LG, and how do I work with your team?
Absolutely. So you also pointed a very interesting core principle that we have or core advantage. When we build our own LG business, we build it together with the startup. So
Mhm.
idea is this. I'm a big fan of what you call outside innovation. I'm a big fan of Bill Joy's the law. I mean,
Mhm.
you heard about it. Say, no matter how smart you are, there are more smarter people outside working for
Mhm.
someone else. That is it. So no matter how well we do as OLG Nova, there are always bigger and better ideas out there for us. So our job is not just try to create ideas on our own, PDs on our own. We want to hear from everybody, and then we have to think about internally, of course, that how we can work with them to create 1 + 1 = 3. So
Mhm.
now we are not going to just take ideas from startups and implement it because that's startups business, not LG's business. But in many cases, startups, for example, life science, let's say there is a life science database company. So for example, because when you do health IT, we really focus on IT side. So let's say
Mhm.
database company say, I have a healthcare data, that's their business. Now they come to us, then we will jointly develop a plan and say that okay, LG is gonna build a new business leveraging that startup's capabilities. For example, LG may develop a new search engine or a new AI engine that's going to, help on drug discovery. I'm just
Mhm.
making these things up, and based on or using the startup's database. And then what that means is when LG's business created, we are becoming a almost deeply involved partners.
Mhm.
And typically, what happens is we invest into, as a equity investment into the startups if they want,
Mhm.
or we come to a commercial revenue sharing agreement, something like that. So if LG Nova's business grows, startups business also grows too. So you
Mhm.
asked for what is the criteria, what is the process, right?
Mhm.
We always have to look at startups that's not just startups that are doing well. I mean, there are a lot of startups doing awesome, but we
Mhm.
have to look at it from the lens of that can this startup or is it startup that we can work with to create something new together. This
Mhm.
is actually very important in many cases because some startups are not very flexible. I mean, especially they are already big and they're already doing well. I mean, they don't need to be flexible. So, okay,
Mhm.
and because if you want to create joint business, both sides need to be flexible. We should be flexible. They should be flexible. So, in some sense, startups that work with us are the ones that say, hey, they want to create new businesses.
Mhm.
They want to do their businesses, but with LG, they can potentially scale it because
Mhm.
LG's create new business that can be essentially part of it, and LG's business scales and their business scales. So that's kind of startups here we're looking for.
I think it totally resonated with me on like, I feel like LG is becoming like a part of the startups, kind of like a co-founding team to like help
Hmm.
them to scale their business. It could be like a lot faster than if they were trying to build from scratch to like build a
Absolutely.
distribution channel. And I wonder, speaking of scale, so like you guys have a lot of programs like that LG Nova have offered. So for example, missions for the future program or like commercial acceleration program, like all these different programs. I feel like that's helping the startup to scale as well as like also scaling the current strategy. Why don't we talk about like, how do you kind of build these kind of programs and like what's the results from it to like, establish these
Absolutely. Yeah.
collaborations?
So we built so far
Mhm.
two programs. Startups as of right now, two ways to engage with us
Mhm.
and get benefit out of it. We are adding one more, which we
Mhm.
will announce in a couple of weeks. But one of them is venture funding. We actually have
Mhm.
a separate venture fund dedicated to invest
Mhm.
into startups that work with us. Okay, so
Mhm.
if then it's not a huge money, but it's a sort of strategic investment from our side, so that it's a we are good friends and we are good
Mhm.
collaborators, so we're gonna work together. Secondly, most importantly, as I mentioned, once we come into an agreement, once we spin out this new business, a new co, that's what they call new business,
Mhm.
these startups will be almost integral part of the new business. So that's where
Mhm.
revenue sharing and all that. So concept is whatever money we make in this
Mhm.
business, they're going to get a cut out of it. Okay, so that
Mhm.
is the second one. Now, third one, which I can show you a glimpse of it, we have a vast network of partners, very large the partners.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a U.S. government, state government level. Sometimes very large corporations. It's not beyond LG. I'm not just talking about LG, large corporations. So when stuff comes to us, we help them to
Mhm.
have access, not just access. We literally have a, we're gonna make something later, but we literally have a dedicated team
Mhm.
to help startups. Those, I mean, not all startups, but help startups that we are very interested to be successful, not just with LG, but with our partners like West Virginia. I mean, they are looking for a lot of healthcare IT solutions and CleanTech solutions, which LG may not be able to provide. I mean, we cannot do everything for them. That's
Mhm.
where we bring those startups as partners and we help them. We literally kind of get into matchmaking and facilitating to make this partnership work. So All these things are a tremendous value from startups perspective.
Mhm.
Yes, they may work with LG, which is probably the highest priority. But in addition to that, we have a list of partners who's willing to work with those startups, because the reason why these partners are willing to work, because LG Nova has a vast network of startups, good startups. And then these companies, they may not or may not have their own network. Usually they don't. This is not kind of like things that they usually do. That's where we
Mhm.
come in. We help them, and we also help startups through the process.
I think like you mentioned something really interesting was like, LG Nova have a lot of big partnerships with the state on the state level or like on the government level or like with big corporations. You guys have announced like a really big collaboration with Virginia,
Yes.
like
West
last month.
Virginia, by
West
the way, West
Virginia.
Virginia.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Like West Virginia earlier this month, earlier oh well earlier like so last month. So I wonder, why don't we start with like what was the collaboration like, and how does LG collaborate with different states?
Absolutely. So it is actually pretty simple. States, not just West Virginia, but a
Mhm,
lot of states we talk to, they want to revamp their industry. They want to
mhm,
do their own digital transformation. There are certain states that may or may not need anyone else's help. Maybe some states are doing really well themselves.
mhm,
Fine. But majority, I can almost say a vast number of states
mhm,
are still behind on that. Okay. And then
mhm,
they have a hard time creating this new economy in those states. And that's where the discussion with West Virginia and LG started almost a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. But say that we met with the high ranking officials of the states and also their partners, and we started discussing West Virginia needs to transform into
mhm,
more future growth industry. The West Virginia is the number two in coal mining right now.
mhm,
But coal mining is relative. I mean, they're still doing very really well, but that is relatively flat industry. It's not just growing as fast as it needs to be. So they were looking for how can they transform their state into digital transformation.
mhm,
So what does they actually mean? So we do healthcare, we do clean tech, we also do AI. We can be applied to more of a many different areas. So idea is that
mhm,
okay, LG Nova, our expertise is creating new businesses. That's what we
mhm,
do. Let's do that with West Virginia, with support from the West Virginia, and create new businesses or new companies, either inside of West Virginia, or even if it's created outside of West Virginia, we can bring some of those capacity into West Virginia, so that eventually we want to create this West Virginia's own new economy flywheel, so they can create their own startups, they can
mhm,
create their own the virtuous cycle, almost like a mini Silicon Valley. I mean, that is
mhm,
sort of like their vision. Many states have been talking about for a long time. I think the problem that they have not done well is that they really did not know how to leverage the local ecosystem. Most of the cases when they try to create these kind of things, they all thought about like transplanting other technologies to some other businesses. So essentially, hey, let's build a factory. Let's build a factory. I give some money to the company. You build a factory in my state, and we create new jobs. Okay, I mean that's the factory,
mhm,
but factory doesn't replicate by itself. I mean, you cannot have a factory has a capacity, comes with products and all that, but
mhm,
that's it basically. Usually, that's a kind of fixed asset. In our case, what we want to do is we want to create exactly a virtual cycle of factory of new economy. So even if we don't have to keep pushing resources exponentially, but there's going to be exponential growth of businesses that comes
mhm.
out of the process. So that was what we ended up with, this agreeing with West Virginia, and it's a process where Virginia agreed to support our activity, the LG Nova's activity. In addition, because of that, the companies that we generate or create was also working with West Virginia and so on.
I really like what you said about like, a lot of the in the past, a lot of like the big collaborations, like maybe a state was trying to like collaborate with a company to build a factory there, or like like a traditional way to collaborating instead of like leveraging like the things that already happening at the state. So like, I feel like that's a really interesting point. And I wonder, so like I want to also double click on like you mentioned about like, LG have a lot of touch on like healthcare, clean tech, or AI. Why don't we talk about like healthcare? I know that you guys are launching a platform like Prime Focus. And why don't we talk about like, how is LG like trying to improve the in-home healthcare as a
Absolutely.
sector?
Absolutely. So those are three main focus areas
Mhm,
for LG Nova. Interestingly, or
mhm,
coincidentally, or not coincidentally, those
mhm,
three are main focus areas of LG, overall LG Corporation. So it's their
mhm,
like next 10, 20, 30 years vision that this
mhm,
is where we want to go. So interesting. So based on that, why we are even doing this? Let's talk about it. What do you choose? The LG's sort of like a slogan is "Life's good," and the
mhm,
symbol LG. I mean, that's a slogan, but that actually has a meaning into it.
mhm,
LG is considered, and also LG's philosophy is to do things that can improve life of people. So quality of life. We our philosophy is don't do things that can harm or hurt people. So
mhm,
that is what it get where we get. So anything we
mhm,
do, we always look at the angle scape. If you do
mhm,
this, is it gonna help the next generation? Whatever that means.
mhm,
And that's always in our mind. So choosing healthcare clean tech. For healthcare, no brainer. We still need a lot of work on healthcare, whether it's system or whether it's a drug or whatsoever.
mhm,
Clean tech, we need cleaner energy sources. We need to save energy. We need to
mhm,
do better use of energy. No brainer. AI is we look at AI a little bit differently. AI itself
mhm,
is a tool. We see it enabler,
mhm,
but we are looking at AI, how it can actually improve the people's lives. So improving people's lives could be more convenience, more sort of like a shorter commute, for example,
mhm,
save time as more safety, for example. That is how AI we look at AI. So and more create more jobs potentially. This sounds
mhm.
like oxymoron, but there is a way to create more jobs using AI. So these kind of things are the basic philosophy. Because of that, the business like Prime Focus, that was the first business, new legal business entity that we launched as LG Nova. It was launched a few months ago. I think they're already doing well. They're working very closely with the West Virginia, for example. They announced a major agreement with the Marshall Health System, which is in West Virginia, all these things. Their focus will be pretty simple. There are a lot of elderly population, or even if they are not elderly, the population that may not have access to nearby hospital. Especially in West Virginia, there are a lot of rural areas. Hospitals are there, but they may not be close enough. So if you have a chronic conditions, diabetes or high blood pressure, it's very hard to get it checked soon or often enough. Usually what happens is you don't check it, and somehow you just figure out later that is went too far.
Mhm,
So this is one of the biggest problem in the state, that when they find out that a person has a chronic condition, it's already like progress to the later stage. So it's very hard to put the genie back into the bottle. Our job is to how can we detect and figure it out much early on, so we have a chance to make it right. And obviously, we cannot do that in hospital settings because they are not going to come to hospital. We have to do it in home settings, whether it's use technologies or some kind of methodologies of sensing. We should be able to find early sign of those things without interrupting and disrupting the people's lives. That's what Prime Focus does.
I really like that, like, it's focusing on like the prevention. And then also like I feel like diabetes is such a really big problem that like the world is having. And I definitely feel like to like find the sometimes like early on it's like extremely important. And I wonder, so like speaking of like all these like implementations on the
Mm.
implementation level, I feel like there's obviously a lot of things that LG have done. But from since like we're both in Silicon Valley, and then at the beginning of the show we kind of like talk about LG is also having a new conference, which is like a not new conference, like this year another InnoFest conference that kind of like showcase like the different things that is like presenting or like is working on. Why don't we like talk about like, what will happen at InnoFest, and then like all these like different interesting topics or like speakers that LG is bringing on, for, to for people to learn more about like LG's product and services, as well as like just being educated in like different spaces in tech.
Yeah, happy to do it. First, we'll do all that, all you said. We're gonna showcase what you do. We're gonna
Mhm,
showcase Prime Focus as a official company. We're gonna also show you what we have in the pipeline, everything. But I wanna kind of like switch concept of this conference a little bit. Yes, this is a business conference, but what I want to make this conference is that I want this to be a party. So
mhm,
this is sort of like I don't so put it this way. I go a lot of conferences, and you go to a lot of conferences, and
mhm,
you just go to there for business. You need the meetings and all that. There are
mhm,
so many of them. I don't need to create another those
mhm,
business focused, sort of like meeting focused conferences. I want innovators or
mhm,
startups and investors come in and have fun for 2 days. Okay, whatever that means. Of course, they're coming to do business. Of course, they want to
mhm,
come here to meet people, but that doesn't need to be in a formal setting of like big agenda. And if you want to do that, you can. But the environment I want to create in this 2 day conference is, hey, relax. LG Nova is throwing 2 days party, 2 day party,
mhm,
and there's no business strings attached. If you want to do business there, we'll provide that opportunity, but come and have fun without any stress back of your mind that you gotta, close a deal or something. So that's the concept. And we'll show you what LG Nova is doing and has been doing. It's not just LG Nova. We're gonna also showcase the startups that we've been working on, amazing startups in my mind, and they bring in. We're going to have great panel discussions. And again, since this is a party, it's not going to be just one directional presentation. There will be something like that. Many of them will be, discussions and panels and participants who are going to join. And if you don't want to talk, just eat some good foods and just see it, enjoy, be part of it. So the reason I'm doing this is because of that. There are a lot of those conferences, Silicon Valley and everywhere. Whenever I go there, I feel like they're so tight. I mean, it's like
mhm,
people are so busy, tight. They're there. I gotta find an investor. I gotta talk to that guy.
mhm,
Yeah. Okay. Good. 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 You do it. Can we just have fun? Just for a couple of
mhm,
days.
mhm,
That's sort of like I kind of instructed my team, said, hey, this is we do this once a year. We don't do that many times. Let's make this a gift to the innovators
mhm,
and Silicon Valley, the innovators and also innovators everywhere else. It's a gift from LG Nova.
mhm,
Just come in and relax, not no strings attached. Just come in and relax, and we're gonna have food, we're gonna have drinks, and we're gonna have nice people that all gonna want to chat with you. I mean, that's even if whatever you want to chat with you. So
mhm,
that's the concept. So yeah, we're gonna have all the showcase and everything, and we're gonna have like real demo. We're gonna have some of them. We're gonna mock up demo. We're gonna have the CEOs of our Prime Focus and others who are gonna discuss and what they want to do in healthcare and all that. But I really want all of us to have fun.
Oh,
That's
that
not
sounds
what.
like a
That's not
amazing
the
time.
answer you wanted, right? I knew that. That's not the answer you wanted, but that's what you're gonna.
Oh, I love that. I feel like that sounds like a really fun, it could be like a really fun experience for everyone. And I wonder, so like, like since like we covered like all the innovative things LG Nova is doing, I also want to have some like topics around like, your day-to-day like at LG, and like, like can for the audience, since you're also like the EVP of LG Electronics, can you give us like sneak peek of like your day to day on a daily level, like driving innovation as well as just like working on interesting projects in tech.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Surprisingly, my day is pretty boring. So actually, the reason it's boring is I want to empower the
Mhm.
teams to do their job. Okay, if all we have an incubation team, we have ecosystem development team, we have marketing team, we have engineering team, we have
Mhm.
funding team. If they do their job, so put it, I designed the organization. If
Mhm.
they do their job with excitement, literally I don't have to do anything. I mean, that's how it was designed. I mean, that's at least the goal. So, frankly, my day-to-day works is meeting those teams and say, hey, is there any? I have 30 minutes that I
Mhm.
reserved for your team. What do you want to talk about? Tell me. I mean, if there's any problem, if you want to run something by me, I'm happy to do it. That is, I'll say, 80% of my time during the day. But here's a kicker. That I said during the day. At night, I get into night shift because the headquarter of
Mhm.
LG is in Korea. It's like,
Mhm.
since I'm a EVP, I have to be directly plugged in. I'm a
Mhm.
senior management of that directly plugged into senior management discussion. So at night, I participate a lot of meetings virtually, of course. So at night, around the 6 o'clock, I have another life and becoming EVP of LG Electronics. And during the day, I'm the head of LG Nova. I run it, do it. But at night, yes, I have to also operate as EVP of LG Electronics. So is it fun? It is. Is it really a lot of work? It is. I think this is very unique. You need to have run the organizations here. Almost like, it's pretty boring. It's boring. Not teamwork is not boring, but my work is boring because that's what I do. And also, you got to work very closely with the headquarter to see what they need, and that's really important, and how things are going over there.
For sure. How like, I guess, like, how do you set KPIs for your own
Yeah.
team? Since, like, you have, like, 2 hats differently, like, one part is, like, as the EVP of LG Technologies or, like, LG Electronics, and the head of LG Nova, I feel like they kind of, like, have different set of, like, goals, like, how do you kind of, like, set up the goals and, like, day-to-days, like, for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. So LG Nova's goal is actually very clear, crystal clear. We have this strategy we came up with about, and we have a very clear goal that in next 5 years we are going to produce about 10 new companies, literally
Mhm.
new companies
Mhm.
out there. We want at least two of them, hopefully three, to become a unicorn, to become a billion-dollar public company. That is our goal. Okay. Remember,
Mhm.
our mission is to create the next LG companies, six companies. And then again, that's what billion-dollar company is going to be. And we do this with our partners and startups and all. So there is a very clearly defined process. So how to develop and how to evaluate, develop, and go through methodically create those companies. We have that. So for LG Nova, we actually have a pretty good process, and KPIs are set up with that North Star. Every department
Mhm.
has a piece to play to get there. So that is the
Mhm.
KPI. Now, when we talk to the headquarters, it becomes a little bit different. Well, KPI itself doesn't change per
Mhm.
se, but
Mhm.
now I am in a very sort of like semi-political environment in some sense, if you understand. I'm not saying it's a bad
Mhm.
sense, but because just like any company, when senior management make decisions, everybody their perspectives and they have to discuss. And I sometimes need to provide input
Mhm.
discussions. So that kind of a perspective and role is in addition to delivering my LG Nova's goal itself. And that is, if you say, okay, do I have additional KPI? Maybe it's not written as a KPI, but that's how I am evaluated from the headquarters. So LG
Mhm.
Nova's KPI itself, of course, but how much do I contribute as a senior management in that? So in making corporate-wide decisions, or obviously I cannot be everywhere. I cannot be part of every decision, but at least the decision that my expertise involved, then I should play my role. I think that's probably the easiest way to explain.
I think it's a really ambitious goal to like have to create like 10 new companies as well as like hopefully 3 unicorns. And I wonder like since like we just talk about like the healthcare AI and like all these like different subsectors, what stage of company does LG Nova typically to collaborate with? Is that like the very, very early stage startups or are they more towards like they already have some sort of establishment in an industry?
So they have to have something. Something within,
Mhm.
I mean, some product, because without product,
Mhm.
there's nothing we can collaborate really. So
Yeah.
typically, but if it is too later stage, the problem is we can use startups technology or license or whatever,
Mhm.
but it's very hard to do code development because they are
Mhm.
like they're already on the path on their own. So typical, our sweet spot is A round companies.
Mhm.
Some of the seed round is possible if they actually have a product, and some of the B round companies also work with if they are more of a like earlier side of the B round, for example.
Mhm.
So that is our sweet spot. And then, though you talked about like how difficult it is, yeah, it is ambitious goal. Just to you everybody knows this. Typically, a great venture capital has a home run
Mhm.
roughly less than 10%. When I say home
Mhm.
run, which is like, $1 billion, is about 10%. Or if they do 10%, it's amazing. We are trying to bring it up to 20%, as I told you. Okay.
Mhm.
So that is a extremely ambitious goal. And why we believe we can do that is because this is not just a investment play. We are not just
Mhm.
putting money. We put in money, but we bring in LG's infrastructure. We bring
Mhm.
in LG's sort of like, aura. We
Mhm.
bring in existing partners, not just LG, but all the state government that they're ready to work. We bring
Mhm.
in also these additional channels that each startup may or may not have access from the beginning. So all these things we are essentially bringing
Mhm.
in from day one.
Mhm.
I did my startup myself. Everything I just mentioned were things I never would have. I didn't have it. I really missed it. Like when I was startup, I say, hey, I am startup ABC. Then typical response from customers is, who are you? I don't know you. And why are you talking to? You don't get the response when it's LG Nova's companies. It
Mhm.
comes with that comfort. So I'm hoping with everything mixed together, the additional empowerment we are giving to our portfolio companies, hopefully we can bring it
Mhm.
to 20%.
Mhm.
That's my goal.
For sure. I feel like that's like you said, I feel like as a startup, like everything is a major sales journey from getting the resources, getting funding to becoming a partner with like maybe even land LG or like equivalent as a partner. It's like extremely difficult. It goes through like so many different sales cycle and having a partner that brings out all these resources is like extremely valuable. I also like at the end like of the interview, like I want to maybe touch up one real question and then we go into like a quick fire round. So one like real question is like, since like you have been working on smart city since the White House era to now at LG, what does smart city looks like for you?
Yeah. So smart city initially, I
Mhm.
started as a sort of more of an engineering mindset. So
Mhm.
as I said, if you overlay IoT
Mhm.
onto municipality, yeah, that's a smart city. So technically, it is not incorrect. It is correct because when you
Mhm.
say IoT, by the way, this is another misunderstanding. A lot of people, when people think about IoT, they think about like sensors connecting.
Mhm.
IoT is much bigger than that. IoT is a whole layer of ecosystem, including data, including
Mhm.
even data analytics, including AI. So the whole thing is IoT ecosystem. So once you bring it in city, technically that is city, smart city. What I realized later, which I did not know at the beginning,
Mhm.
is that people do not create a smart city only because there are sensors around. Sensors can be around, but at the end
Mhm.
of the day, if people do not have a benefit, people do not see why those
Mhm.
sensors have to be around, first, no one is going to pay for it. City will not going to pay for it. And secondly, people are going to start being disturbed by all these
Mhm.
things. So really, second half of my years in the federal government when doing smart city, most of the time I really didn't think about technology. I mean, technology was
Mhm.
there. I mean, it was not lack of technology. Really, it's about what are the services that city can provide to their citizens or residents that they can tangibly feel that, okay, this is really making me a difference. I
Mhm.
mean, just simple things like, okay, some kind of signal optimization, street lights. So it's actually happening. So this is a funny thing. 10 years ago, when there's street light there, they really just had timers. So what
Mhm.
happened was when no cars there at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was still sitting there with a red light for 3 minutes until the red light turns when there's no car.
Mhm.
Now, most of the street lights actually have a sensor, connected sensors built in. So they detect the presence of the cars in the intersection. And with more smart, they can do traffic controlling. Now, people think doesn't know whether that is a smart city. It was a part of the big smart city
Mhm.
project, although they don't know about it much. But you can see that people's lives became better, saves time and all that.
Mhm.
So I think a smart city is again, it's a long-term journey. It's not a short-term thing. I think it's going to take a while, but again, gradually, little by little, it's going to make people's life better. However, the I don't want this is important. Pushing technology forward too much, we're going to kill it because that's going to go against the people mindset. Okay, city is city. This is where I live. I don't need technology more than I need. And that
Mhm.
is actually extremely sensitive discussion we all need to have.
I completely agree with you. I feel like, smart city is should be focusing on like the city instead of just like implementing like as much technology as possible. I really love that idea. And in the end, we like talking about life, we have like so many a quick fire round for you. Okay, so what's your favorite book?
Wait a second. Oh, I didn't see this coming. What is my favorite book?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I have two books. Well, actually, many books. First, Built to Last.
Mhm.
That is very interesting, and Good to Great. That's another
Mhm.
interesting, and that's Inside a Tornado. That is all. It's all about innovation. I think some of the books were written by same person, but
Mhm.
those books really explain what it means to do innovation, especially when you are either part of a bigger group that you have to make some changes. That actually get influenced a lot in doing my work. So concept. So I know that we are running out of time. So the concept is these big companies are aircraft carriers. They cannot move fast. They cannot,
Mhm.
maneuver this way. That's why we exist. We should never, and we should not be part of aircraft pass craft. We should be a cruiser, much smaller, or even just boat, a small motorboat out there,
Mhm.
much faster. We may fail or it will fail, but it's okay because we can come back up quickly and then we can try to find the right direction.
Mhm.
That's what we are. And so first, we should never, almost never be attached to the aircraft carrier because we become part of the aircraft carrier. And our job has to be finding something aircraft carrier cannot. And
Mm.
that's kind of like a philosophy that I used in building the whole LG, which I
Mm.
got from those books.
Ooh, I love that. Like to like, come back even if you fail, but like go back to trying and
Exactly.
like finding the new direction. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Well, I mean, these questions were not in those kind of questions. Okay. Who am I going to invite to dinner party? I like to invite I'm going to make it generic. I like startup founders. I like startup
Mhm.
founders, but not just startup founder. I like startup founders who always think about what's new and what's new. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, startup founders, I mean, they're all innovators.
Mhm.
But surprisingly, startup founders sometimes are so much sucked into what they do. I mean, that's what they have to do. So they don't really have a lot of bandwidth to think about, okay, what's new, what's next. But there are really bright startup founders that talks about it, not just trying to sell their products. I mean, they
Mhm.
have to sell their products. So those are the folks I want to invite. I'm not sure I'm not giving you the answer because I cannot come with a name right now, but I think
Mhm.
those are the ones I really want to have a dinner with, and obviously investors. They
Mm.
have money. They have money. I can work with their money myself. So we in LG know about too because we are building our companies too. Yeah, of course.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
That's a great question. So I had a lot of supervisors, bosses, just like anybody, for in my whole career, 30 plus years. There are only three, probably two supervisors that I can really call heartily as my
Mhm.
boss. Boss and supervisor are not the same.
Mm.
Supervisors are organizationally, basically they evaluate you. It's just order you sit on and you do what he or she tells you to do. Boss is somebody who I feel like that I am being influenced. I am being
Mhm.
impacted in a good way. Okay. And someone who understands me, someone who is
Mhm.
actually even above meaning that he is running over
Mhm.
here who understands me, give me the room to expand or accelerate my own capacity to be successful. That is what I call a boss. I mean,
Mhm.
that's at least my definition. There are only two or three people that exist in the world. Those are the ones I got really impacted. I'm not sure whether you were asking whether I was impacted by Warren Buffett or sort of like, well, those are, I mean, they had their own way, I'm sure. They have their own way of success. And the reason it's hard for me to quote any of those big is that I am a firm believer that you cannot be successful just by replicating others. It's going to never be that. Okay.
Mm.
So you can read or you can follow what they've been done. But if you just replicate, okay, this guy, I did this, so I should do the same thing here. It never works because business is different, time is different, environment is different. You always have to digest what others have done and you have to create your own. And that's why many times I see those big names and I actually follow some of them, their life and all that, and I get impressed. But I don't just take it. I try to avoid just replicating what they do. And I want to make sure that if I do something similar to them, I want to make sure that I do it because of my own reason, not because someone else just did it. I think that worked for me so far. So that's my
Mm.
answer.
Oh, I really like your definition of like impact, like influence versus like just supervising, as well as like gave like just like not following anyone's like career path to try to become someone else other than yourself. Last question is like, where can we find you outside of work?
Ah, you can find me first outside work in my couch. I'm a big Netflix fan, Amazon Prime too, so I watch a lot of them. It gives me time to think. So honestly, it's when I watch, I don't really watch it. I watch it, but I don't really watch it. And I'm a big soccer fan, English Premier League. I watch every game if possible every week, but really it helps my brain to relax a little bit. That's probably what it is. And then I travel a lot. I traveled a fair share of mine already last 30 years. I don't know, you can find me anywhere on the road that often anymore, but if 10 years ago, you are able to find me in Europe and in Asia on in the United States, you could have seen me. Right now, as I said, I'm trying to empower my team, and that's really what I try to do. And I obviously go to conferences, Silicon Valley. There are smart people. There's nice dining area, dining restaurants, and I go to them. So, interesting. So yeah, if you really want to see me, you can find me some restaurants in Bay Area.
Amazing. The last question. What's your favorite algae product?
Okay, so I have two answers. The first answer is something that is not out there yet. The prime focus, as
Mm.
I say, is creating an amazing healthcare product or platform. So it's gonna come out in next year, I believe. And so that I know already will be the one that I'm gonna love the most. Okay,
Mm.
and that's that. Secondly, LG makes a lot of products.
Mhm.
I think everything's good. I'm not trying to make something better, but in my world, pretty much the washers and dryers,
Mhm.
they are top notch. It's just the capability. It's not just the menus, or anything. It's just the reliability and robustness, and it's just there, does the job. And you know what it takes to what happens when one of those washers dryers break down. It just
Mhm.
ruins your life for a week or two. So, but you will never have that's will never happen with LG. At least that I can tell.
Amazing. I my personal favorite is the fridge. But
Oh, okay.
anyway, I like feel like the washer and dryer is like also like you cannot live without because like you can't really. I feel like LG products are always like very endurance, so like you never really like exchange them. Okay, so at the last part, I want to quickly address one of the audience question. Jack from the audience says like, where can people find the conference? And I think this is already in the first comment, and I want to just give it a shout out. It's like innofest.lgnova.com. Please check it out. And thank you so much, Sokwoo, for coming on the show. You were so fun to chat with.
All right, great. I had a really good time, and if you have more questions, I'm happy to come back anytime. Okay.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Grace. Have a great weekend. Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye bye. See you later.
Thanks for tuning into Smart Venture Podcast. If you learned something from the episode or even just mildly tolerated me, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. I promise I will keep bringing you more successful, insightful interviews and insider tips about startups. Remember, sharing is caring. So tell your friends to listen too, or enemies, I won't judge. Until next time, keep venturing smartly.